In the Clive Barker Podcast, longtime fans Ryan and Jose interview guests, bring you news, and take a deep dive into Barker-related stuff. In episode 459, we talk about the Hellraiser V that never happened, Hellraiser Hellfire. Plus, we've got some Hellraiser release news. This episode is sponsored by Don Bertram's Celebrate Imagination. Don Bertram is a longtime friend of Clive and advocate of his art. But Don's unique and inspiring paintings are for sale, and over 50% of the proceeds go to the Arts and Medicine program at the Texas Children's Cancer Center. There's even a paver in Washington, D.C. representing Celebrate Imagination. We're thrilled that this worthy cause is sponsoring our podcast again this year, and we hope that you'll consider looking over the Etsy shop to buy one of his original paintings or books. Follow the link in the show notes or click the side banner and let's see what's new with Don Bertram today. For Barker-related stuff, check out the videos going over the original painting The Bug Brothers by Don Bertram and also his introduction to the 35th anniversary screening of Hellraiser. You can find those on our blog and we've got a link in the show notes. Also, did you know Don Bertram does commissions? Take a look at the Pinterest page and see if there's a style there that you might want to get a custom commission of your own. On those commissions, if you don't like the result, you don't have to buy it. On his Etsy shop, he's got his books, The Chimney Sweep's Tale, Celebrate Imagination, and The Imaginaries. Okay, well, welcome to episode 459 of the Clive Barker Podcast. Today we're recording a little bit early for the week. We've got a Jericho Squad coming up that's going to take us a little while to edit. So we picked something special, actually, and it's something out of the book that we just talked about on our last episode.
That's right, the special edition series of Phantasmagoria number 9, which is all about Hellraiser. All the stuff you ever wanted to know about Hellraiser, but either didn't know or too afraid to ask.
Yeah.
And even some stuff you never even imagined was ever tried to happen, like this movie.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about Hellraiser V Hellfire. Not Inferno, Hellfire, although they sound similar. So, but before we get to Hellraiser Hellfire, let's talk about, we've got a little bit of Hellraiser news from the Reef. Thanks to Pete Atkins, because he posted this on both Twitter and on Facebook, that there's a North American release of the Quartet of Torment, and it looks exactly the same. From what I can tell, it looks exactly the same as the UK version.
Right. So everybody who paid import prices,
yeah,
I guess we kind of told you so that this would probably come out. I mean, I remember when.
I paid import prices.
Yeah, me too. I remember when the other box came out, right? Mm-hmm. The other box and came out by Arrow, and we were like, yeah, this is probably going to come out in America. And then, of course, it came out in America. So This is the same situation here. This box also, I'm pretty sure, was coming out here.
And the weird thing is, it seems like the UK versions are always limited release, but then the American ones seem to kind of go on for a long time.
Well, yeah. I mean, consider how many more people exist in the United States than there are in England. It's a bigger market. And he thinks that there might be a limited edition Chadra Cenobite cover as well, just like they did for the Arrow release in the UK, which would be exciting. I didn't get a chance to get that.
You can. We've got a link in the show notes where you can go buy it from Arrow.
Oh, all right. So there's a second chance for that one if you missed the first time.
I got the Pinhead one.
Awesome. Look at that. $80 for the Chadra edition.
Hey, this is Ryan jumping in here with some news that came out right after we recorded. So I'm going to just kind of throw this in here. Albion's Eco-Eeerie by Phil Smith. This is obviously released in the UK because it's sold in Great Britain pounds. This is a book on TV and movies of the haunted generations. And so it talks about TV series and movies and stuff. It's got Night of the Diva in the Maze, The Company of Wolves, Quartermass Experiment, Quartermass 2, The Strange Worlds of Planet X, Fireball, XL5, Quartermass in the Pit, Oh Lucky Man, The Changes, Children of the Stone, Whistle and I'll Come to You, A Warning to the Curious, the Lovecraft Investigations podcast, and Hellraiser and Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, along with The Girl and All the Gifts. So, yeah, this covers Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2. So, go check it out. We've got a link in the show notes. Okay, back to Jose and I. Okay, let's jump right into our chat about Hellraiser V Hellfire.
So, who came up with this idea?
You did.
No, I mean for the movie. So,
yeah, it's by Stephen Jones and Michael Marshall Smith.
Right. So it looks like at this point the last Hellraiser was Hellraiser Bloodline, right? So we saw Hellraiser Pinhead blew up in space, and it's the end of the series, and it was like an Alan Smithy film and all that stuff, and it was. People were like, "Oh my gosh, are we going to see more of this?" They just killed Pinhead, and
but they killed him way in the future.
Right, but
so there's still plenty of ways that they could have sequels going all the way until, like, what was that, 2300 or whatever?
Yeah, of course, 22 something. Yeah, they could have done that, but at the same time, it was like, well, now it's kind of cheating because they already got rid of Pinhead, and now they're going to bring him back. I remember
for the they killed him in the future.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it felt like it was the ending of the franchise, right? It felt like that was it. So now we know how it's going to end.
Not to me. I mean, I saw that and I was like, oh yeah, they purposely opened it up for more sequels. Since
obviously, yeah.
In 300 years or whatever.
Sure. I mean, it was the 90s. It was the time when they killed Superman, and everybody thought it was going to be for keeps, and then obviously it wasn't, and everybody learned a lesson. But I was like, what's going to happen now? Because if you remember, there were a lot of years in between Bloodline and Hellraiser 5, and nobody knew what was going to happen, if anything was going to happen.
It was like 96 to 2000.
There's going to be something about, I remember the rumors that kept coming out of conventions and stuff like that. Some said that, they're going to do something which is going to be not just Cenobites, but angels. We're going to be seeing like hell, and it's going to have hundreds of Cenobites. It's going to be amazing. And it was stuff that would just come out on websites like the Hellbound Web. One of them was going to be like a young kid being babysit by his sister that solves the box and then gets taken.
Yes.
Then she has to go into hell and rescue him. Anyway, at this point, basically they just finished number 4 so they could keep the franchise for 5 and 6. And apparently this project was something that was kind of commissioned by the London office of Dimension, right? I think.
Well, I think they approached the London office of Dimension.
Yeah, because
Stephen Jones and Michael Marshall Smith made this, and they wanted to set it in England, and so they approached the British office of Dimension, and they were really excited about it.
Yeah, like the first time that this was ever mentioned was in Paul Kane's Hellraiser Films and Their Legacy. If you go to chapter 19, Dante's Footsteps, he starts this chapter talking a little bit about the story behind it and also a little bit about the synopsis for this movie. And
a synopsis of a synopsis.
Yes, exactly. A synopsis of a treatment, yes.
Yeah.
It says here that though this was written in response to a commission from Miramax's London office, encountered a warm welcome at a pitch in Los Angeles, and received strong support from both Doug Bradley and Peter Atkins. Hellraiser Hellfire ran aground on the mechanics of the film industry. Or perhaps it still bides in the shadows. So it took a while for this to come out, right? I mean, it took until a few months ago for this to finally get published.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you hear about studios buying screenplays all the time that don't get made into movies.
Yeah.
And I know that they pitched this, and they waited, and they never got a response. But I don't know. I didn't really get the understanding of whether they actually bought it or not.
I guess not. Otherwise, they would have paid them out, and it doesn't sound like they got paid out for this. But in any case, what happens with a lot of movie projects, he said nobody ever told anything, and then they saw in the Wikipedia article that there was a note saying that the pitch was rejected due to budgetary concerns after the film was opted to be released direct to video. And he said, well, nobody told us, so, that's worth what it's worth.
It seemed to me they were also pitching a theatrical movie. I mean, that's the way it reads like one.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. This would have been definitely up there in the budget, and it would have made sense for this one to have been a theatrical to keep the franchise going with more momentum, I guess.
Yeah.
This is a complete pitch package, I guess. They kind of scanned all the pages of the pitch, and they put like a facsimile edition. And I guess it starts with the page explaining who Smith & Jones is, so it's their partnership.
Overall, one thing that kind of bugged me a little bit about this was the way to pitch this movie, they kind of ran down Hellraiser 3 and 4 a little bit.
That is true. Yeah, there are some beats here that are definitely coming back from, and callbacks to the previous movies too.
That's true. They even though they talk, they're like, these ones weren't successful because of this, and this is this is why ours is better. But they did still reference Hellraiser 3 and 4. So this would have been a part of the original, because it's like the first 4 movies fit together in a universe, right? And then the other ones, it's kind of debatable whether they really fit together or not.
Yeah, but this would definitely take place in the same chronology as the first 4 Hellraisers, because Kirsty is in it. Kirsty is a derelict in this story, so we get to hear and see what happened to her. There's a character who's going to be investigating what happened at the house in Ludovico Street. And
actually, that thing with Kirsty made me sad. I was really like, oh, come on. Why are you going to do that to Kirsty?
It was kind of a cursed ending for Kirsty, turning into a derelict, crazy lady that just walks around.
Yeah, and then like that, doesn't the hellfire kind of rains down or something? She just dies, right?
Yeah, she dies at the end. Yeah, she dies at the end, but she's got a smile on her face because her torture is over. So they have an interesting opening here. They talk about who the Hellraisers are. So who's Stephen Jones and who is Michael Marshall Smith? Yeah. And there's some quotes here from Doug Bradley and Clive Barker piling praise on Michael Marshall Smith's previous book and Stephen Jones and
Stephen Jones being an expert on Hellraiser because he was the publicist for the first 3 movies.
So they would bring it back to that British feel, right? So it's going to take place in London. We talked about that a little bit in the previous episode. We talked about how Hellraiser 1 and 2 definitely takes place in London. And it would also kind of open up in a brutal kind of scene, right? So it would open straight into the Cenobites, like in the middle of initiating like some poor couple that opened the box into like a world of torture. And the only person who survives that night is a young girl that Pinhead says, she's innocent. We're not going to take her, but she's under my care or something.
Yeah, Christine is her name.
Yeah, which is kind of similar to Kirsty, right? So right off the bat, foreshadowing. They don't say the name of the girl at the beginning, so we'll find out later who she really is.
Yeah.
The title Hellfire kind of summons ideas of like secret societies and the Hellfire Club. There's like a secret society like that in this story too, right? A circle of 9 people who are like powerful occult figures of this secret society that's run by this guy called John Credence, yes. Jack Credence, yes. Mysterious character, businessman, a finger in every pie. This secret society of 9 people kind of reminds me a little bit of, I wonder how much of a callback it is to the Tabula Rasa in Weave World.
Yeah.
Because they even have their own tower.
Imagica.
Right, yeah. Imagica, yeah. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of that because this was written in 96. Just like one of the 9 gets killed and he's riding a subway train, and all of a sudden he finds himself that the train is going to a station that he never saw before, and it's called Hobbs End. The train stops at that station, and then he just hears like the doors open and some knives being sharpened, and then they cut away. And I was like, is this a reference to the Midnight Meat Train? That's what kind of zipped into my mind when I was reading that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, Hobbs End sounds familiar. So I went to look up Hobbs End, and I found a list of fictional tube stations. And Hobbs End, or Hobbs Lane, which would be the street that it would be under, is a fictional station from Quartermass in the Pit, So that's kind of it's a callback to like that particular movie.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of cool that they were like peppering little British things throughout. Jack Credence, he goes into this old bookstore, I guess, which is run by a guy called Marchant or Merchant, foreshadowing. Especially after watching Bloodline, there's definitely a connection here with Merchant.
Yeah, Dennis Merchant.
Yes.
So that made me wonder, is that supposed to be the kid from Hellraiser 4?
Oh, good question. Okay. I think the kid, wasn't he called Jack? He would only
be 4 years older, but I don't remember.
Merchant's son. I think it was called Jack. Come here, Jack. Yeah,
so
no more games. I don't know. It's probably like, it would be a cousin, like someone from the family.
Yeah.
Who's the guy in Hellseeker, for example? Which merchant is that? I mean, it's whoever.
Did Hellseeker have a merchant?
Debtor.
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
Debtor.
Right.
Yeah, those two movies kind of like meld around in my head.
Right, and Debtor was like...
Well, he's supposed to be part of the family, right? He's supposed to have the toy maker's bloodline, at least, I think. So
how many
it wasn't clear.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen Debtor.
The last time I watched it was for this podcast.
Yeah, for the commentary track that we did, which was years ago. So I don't want to get into Debtor because I don't like it that much and I don't remember it that much.
Yeah.
But that one also had a merchant, and this movie has a little guy called Dennis, an old guy, old bookstore, and he's got a picture of an old army captain in his office. Hint, hint.
Right. Yeah, and that seemed like a callback to Hellbound. Was that Dennis that had that, or Credence?
Dennis has a store. Credence goes there because he wants to hire Christine to find out information about some corners of London. A house in Dollis Hill, 66 Ludovico Street, pretty much on the nose there.
Yeah. And so she goes there to investigate that house, and she sees Frank up in the attic. It's like a psychic sort of after effect or something. It's not... It seems like he's not really there, but she's kind of feeling the events of the past, maybe?
Yeah, yep. Definitely. She's definitely attuned to the psychic echoes of what happened there because she's connected unwittingly and unknowingly. I mean, she's probably repressed it at this point, but she was that girl at the beginning of the movie. So she has seen the Cenobites, and her parents were definitely taken by the Cenobites.
Yeah, and she's forgotten because it's so traumatic that she's blocked it out of her mind.
But when she comes back from visiting that house, she sees a derelict comes by the store and has an old book that he's trying to sell. And as we get one of those like Faustian moments, right? Just like the art gallery in Hellraiser 3, and it literally is the art gallery in Hellraiser 3 dialogue. It's like, what do you want? Whatever you think it's worth.
Just the figure I had in mind.
Take pleasure in it.
Mm-hmm.
So a definite callback to that. They add some embellish the book kind of details about it. Like, it looks like it's bound in human skin. The guy Marchant, he obviously didn't like that. And he's like, okay, well, don't buy anything from that guy again. And he puts the book away.
Yeah.
Because he also knows more than he's letting on.
Mm-hmm. But he's also a little disappointing. He doesn't get a whole lot done, and he's kind of a dupe, and it seems like he just dies.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't have the same genius that was present in certain ancestry of his bloodline. Christine has a boyfriend called Pete. Okay, so that day after they get that book from the derelict, they go out, and her boyfriend are dancing around in some decommissioned church that was built by Nicholas Hawksmoor, the architect.
Yeah.
And there's something weird and creepy.
He sees a vision of Christine, like, luring him into some other rooms, and they go, like, I think down an elevator, or somehow they ended up somewhere where it turns out like he's in hell, I think. And it wasn't really Christine that lured him there.
Yeah, it's one of those tropey moments where it's like, the illusion is like, it's someone you know, but it's really not someone you know. It's just an illusion attracting you. And it gets a little fuzzy here what's going on, really, because...
It's hard to, yeah.
It's like there are places in London where it feels like the walls between here and there are a little fuzzy. And this might be one of those, especially because it was built by that architect Hawksmoor. And they try to make it like there's a mystery behind that. Mm-hmm. There are places marked on a map that there are ritual murders being committed. Like at least 2 of the 9 get killed by the Cenobites.
And I'm a little confused about the plot of this, but it seems like these sacred sites and this old church that has the rave or whatever is one of the sacred sites. And so do they have to sacrifice or kill somebody in each site to sort of help solve the puzzle?
Yeah, I think that's what is hinted here. I mean, this is clearly a treatment, so it's not a completely like built up story. So you have to jump a few things here and there. But I think you're right.
And they make Pete an unsympathetic character. He's her Christine's boyfriend, but he's described as someone who likes looking at other women,
wandering out.
Yeah,
he gets to be taken by what is described here in the treatment as the engineer from Hellraiser, but in an enhanced CGI version, which I'm not sure how. Yeah, I'm not sure how that would have worked.
Yeah, they wrote that in there. Which in 1999, 2000 might have looked all right. I mean,
Yeah, but 96, I don't know. Yeah. 96, 97.
Yeah, maybe they would do a combination of practical and CGI.
I don't know, man. I just get like this flashback to seeing like Yoda and like the prequels, and I was like, oh, that was a little bad. Remember how the CGI was a little bad for the prequels?
In episode 1, he was a puppet.
Yeah, but then they redid that, I think. I think for episode 2 or the Attack of the Clones,
I guess they did.
They started using CGI for that, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they went back and redid the CGI,
Yeah.
There's always changes. But I don't know, man. I mean, the engineer, I'm kind of used to seeing it like be a practical effect, so I don't know how that would have worked out.
I would have hoped that they would have found a way to make it look real and good, but who knows. But in this treatment, you get to see him chasing, is it Pete, down the hallway and slashes him to pieces with his hands.
That's the good thing about CGI would be that he would have, we could make a more dynamic engineer, right? We could make something that wouldn't be manipulated physically, so you could just make it do whatever, jump around from a wall to another or the ceiling. It all depends on how the technology would be there for that in 1997.
Right. Yeah. And so I guess that's the implication, is that that's what he was going to do to Kirsty if he ever caught up to her in that hallway.
Yeah. And then one of the 9 is killed at that subway station, Hobbs End, that we talked about.
Yeah.
And then it looks like there's also Jack Credence's right arm woman, I guess you would call her,
Camilla.
is Camilla. Yeah, and Camilla is the one that's like she's kind of a heavy, she does the dirty work of going into the night of London and rounding up unhoused
Bums
people,
and stuff,
and just bringing them to be ritually sacrificed by the 9 in whatever rituals and magic they perform. So she becomes kind of like a perfect contact for Pinhead to get in touch with, because Pinhead wants to recruit someone like Jack Credence, because apparently the mantle of being Pinhead comes with a time limit, I guess. You can do it.
Yeah,
you can replace yourself.
That's kind of interesting, and maybe it would be fleshed out a little better in the script, but it seems like that's kind of the end result of this plot, is that Pinhead can be only Pinhead for 100 years, and then it's time for a break. And someone else can take the baton or whatever.
Yeah, this brings echoes to me of that Pinhead comic book series that we had from Marvel.
Right,
Remember that? Where over
he was reborn in different eras.
That's right. He was like a bishop in France with long whiskers. He was a Cro-Magnon-like dude with the pins in his head, and I don't.
Or the Boom Hellraiser comic, right, where he wanted kind of a break, and he got to go to Earth for a while, and other people took his place.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, he let Kirsty take his place in the Boom Hellraiser comics.
Harry D'Amour.
Yeah, I mean, and that he had a different kind of plan for that. He wanted to go to heaven, right? He wanted to be redeemed and enter heaven, I guess. But so going back to Hellfire, we find out what happened during her investigations. We find out what happened to Joey Summerskill. We find out what happened to Kirsty. You know, they sent Kirsty to the Chouinard Institute, and then she disappeared. She disappeared, and she ends up appearing in this story as kind of a derelict, saying like, "Oh, they come through the box. You know, they come from somewhere else," and just kind of.
So what happened to Joey? I forgot.
She committed suicide. Apparently, that's what they say here.
Yeah, that seems pretty rough.
They say Kirsty Cotton ended up in the Chouinard Institute and learns of the bizarre suicide of American TV anchor woman Joey Summerskill.
Oh.
No one knows what happened to Kirsty. And so
that always kind of bugs me when the sequel to a movie takes away the happy ending, you know, from the previous one. Like Ghostbusters 2, it was like they were, you know, in the first Ghostbusters, they were all, you know, they were being cheered by the whole town. And then in Ghostbusters 2, like some of them are in a mental institution and the city of New York had sued them.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that sucks. You just took away the happy ending that we had.
But it made sense, though, because you can't just change the world that way and just the world would fall apart if people really knew that. I think ghosts were real. I mean, it would completely be a game changer. So I guess they just end up thinking, oh, you know, it was a mass delusion. It was a gas leak or whatever. It was psychosis. I don't know.
Well, they were almost like in a parade at the end of the first movie.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
They thrive better as characters when they're at the bottom, right? When they're just like, everybody has 2 mortgages these days, you know. This is the last of the petty cash. So basically it's that they have to be at the bottom so the movie can show them rise up again and become heroes. But but in this case, they really just completely destroy and obliterate what happens to Kirsty. I mean, we do see
basically
in the third
all
one.
Characters from all previous movies, right? Or, you know.
Yeah, that's true. But I think it would make sense for Kirsty to be somehow marked from her experience. I don't want to believe that she would become like a crazy derelict. She would become a pariah because how is she going to explain what happened, right? At the end of Hellraiser 1, it's bad enough that she's saying that demons came and killed her dad and killed Julia, had all those bodies in the house stashed. Like, nobody's going to believe her. So they're going to think she did it or that the family did it and she's messed up. Yeah.
Well, but then how do you explain all the crazy crap that happened at the Chouinard Institute? I mean, they're not going to say that, oh, yeah, she went around, like, cutting people's hands off and skinning people alive and stuff. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
They would never be able to prove that she was responsible for all that.
Yeah, they would have to say there was, like, some violent patients got loose or attacked someone else. I mean, there would be some sort of cover-up, obviously. I mean, I don't think people will be able to take in the fact that there was like a big storm and a giant interdimensional portal opened up and demons came and tortured our patients.
And all the occult crap that Chouinard had in his house. And he had like a torture basement basically in the institute.
Yeah. But the horrible holding cells for the violent, incurable, disturbed patients.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kirsty could also just say that Chouinard was behind everything. She doesn't have to try to, you know, convince the world about Cenobites.
Right, but in this one, it's like they tie everything with a neat bow by getting rid of that, and then they go like, well, okay, the Cenobites are still in the picture, but because keep in mind that you really can't expect actors to be able to keep coming back for the same roles for sequels, right? That's what they were thinking about with Julia, and they wanted Claire Higgins to come back and become like the franchise, but she's like, no, that's not what I want to do with my career.
Well, and Bradley can keep coming back, you know, for 9 movies.
That's true, yeah. But he complained, you know, every single movie that he was just getting less and less money to the point where it wasn't even worth it to keep doing it.
And less screen time.
Yeah, basically, yeah. He just became like the Deus Ex Machina to come in at the end and kind of take everybody to hell. But anyway,
remind everybody that it's really a Hellraiser movie, even though it didn't seem like it for the first 80 minutes.
That's right. He did a good job holding that up. We see new Cenobites in this movie too, right? I mean, we see one guy called Needleface. We see another Cenobite called the Coupling. And these would have been some pretty amazing designs, right? Needleface, I think, is supposed to be Christine's boyfriend that gets tortured and taken by the engineer.
Yeah.
He would be covered in hypodermic needles and knives, I think.
Because he was a drug addict or he was a druggie.
And then the Coupling are I guess something you would see out of that, that body and the Thing. Like two bodies kind of restitched back together and to form one bigger creature.
Or like the twins in Bloodline.
Yeah, like the twins in Bloodline. Good point.
And they're Christine's parents.
Yes. So Camilla is tasked by Pinhead to try to recruit Jack Credence to take his place. But
so she had a secret, she opened the box and had a meeting with Pinhead and made a deal with him.
Yeah. A pact.
Yeah, but Credence had already made a pact. And so on this point, I'm a little confused. Because, why was Credence and Camilla working against each other, unknowingly, I guess, and Pinhead's making a deal with both of them?
I got that he did a deal with Pinhead for power.
Yeah.
And he was, providing, I guess, hell with souls.
Do you send somebody to hell by sacrificing them? That doesn't seem very fair.
It's just not a complete story.
Yeah, right. It is just a treatment. And it's more to get the feel of what the movie's going to be like.
I think what happened was he knew the rituals that he had to do. And I guess he just didn't know what that was leading up to. Pinhead must not have told him that to get that power, he would have to take his place and take his mantle. So he didn't realize that the last sacrifice was supposed to be him. He's supposed to become the new Pinhead. So he thought he was just trading all these lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that's confusing to me, because he already made this deal with Credence. So why did he have to make another deal to help move things along, I guess, right, with Camilla?
What I was trying to say is I guess that Credence doesn't understand that he's supposed to take, at least that's what I'm trying to get at here. I don't think he understands that he's supposed to take the mantle of becoming the new Pinhead. I think he just thinks that
his deal? Maybe it wasn't.
Because it's never really spelled out what he expects, right? It just keeps saying that if he can only survive to make one more sacrifice, everything he was promised will be his. But he can feel death stalking him in the shadows of a city which now stirs from sleep. I think he thinks that he just needs to do one more sacrifice, wield the power of hell, and then become
so he did so he just doesn't know that what that means is becoming a Cenobite.
Yeah, that's what I got out of it. Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
Camilla, however, she actually has a scene here where she actually turns herself into a Cenobite, right?
Yeah, that must have been we've never seen before.
Yeah, that would have been something crazy to see happen in the movie. She would be stabbing and mutilating herself and sticking mechanisms into her flesh in front of Pinhead and stuff. That would have been pretty amazing.
She got so into killing people that she sort of started to become obsessed with pain and death.
Mm-hmm. Christine goes to see if she can get to Jack Credence's office because she understands something's going on. Meanwhile, London is kind of starting to get kind of stormy, and you'd start seeing hints of Leviathan kind of showing up around London, I guess, and things would not work properly, and cars wouldn't start, and they would kind of turn that atmosphere into something charged with something magical. This would be the pyramid at the top of the Tower of the Nine. That's the last sacred place, I guess. And so that's where everything's going to come to a head. That's where the sacrifice needs to be done. And by the time she gets there, Christine, she sees Jack Credence, and blue shafts of blue light kind of come out of everywhere, and Pinhead shows up.
Yeah. Which was something we didn't mention before, but previously in this treatment, whenever Cenobites show up, they were showing up without Pinhead for the most part. Most of the time, it was like female Cenobite and Chatterer and Butterball one time, right. Mm-hmm. And then another time was the
Needleface and the coupling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then
Pinhead is in the first scene.
He was, Pinhead was in the first scene because that was like the setup for Christine's, trauma and stuff. And then he comes back at the end as kind of a, the climax, I guess.
And so, right at the end, where we got Jack Credence, Christine, Pinhead, and it's a last sacrifice moment. And Jack's like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice this girl. He gets a knife and is about to cut her throat. But then we find that, no, this is the girl that Pinhead said, no, she's innocent, she's mine. She's not Jack's to sacrifice. So he's not going to let that happen. So
and so there's this weird sort of is it inner monologue or just them describing what's going on? Is that Pinhead's giving up in this moment? He's giving up his dream of getting to rest and stuff because he doesn't want to sacrifice this girl that he sort of made a promise to.
Even though he points the finger at Jack and turns him into like a crushed, like massive bone and flesh, he's still kind of like still dragging like the Terminator, I guess, trying to get to Christine to kill her. And by destroying and obliterating his soul, Pinhead also dismisses the last vestige of Captain Elliot Spencer, which is his compassion. And that's when he just becomes doomed to stay in hell for another 100 years. And so that kind of wraps everything in a neat bow here.
Yeah.
So status quo is preserved.
Yeah. It's an interesting movie. I mean, I would have loved to have seen how it turned out. I think it's probably a lot better than what we got for Hellraiser V Inferno.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no Kung Fu Cowboys in this one.
No. But this is not the complete climax of the movie, because then she would be like running out of the building. It's obvious that the last sacrifice is not going to happen, and everything's going to kind of fizzle out. And
but the skies are turning red, and there's like hellfire, I think, raining from the sky.
Yeah. And then she comes across the coupling Cenobite and finds out who those two people stitched together are.
Yeah.
They're her parents from the opening scene of the movie that were being tortured by the Cenobites, and they were turned into this one double-bodied Cenobite, which is kind of a cool, horrifying moment here.
Yeah, and the father part of the coupling is like, doesn't care, doesn't recognize her, is just like a Cenobite, and wants to go after her, and the mother says, like, release us.
Yeah. Yeah. The dad says, come to daddy.
Yeah, I know.
So that'd be another callback there.
Yeah.
This kind of reminds me of I know this came after the Hellfire treatment, but the detective Hellseeker, right?
Oh,
it's all good, Trevor. It's all good. The guy who has two heads at the end of the movie.
Oh yeah, right.
The black inspector and the other guy, the good cop, bad cop.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that was totally a Jacob's Ladder movie.
So she ends up plunging the dagger into the coupling's heart and pushes him into the shaft of light. That's kind of like, obviously you can't have a big moment without having some major city in the world with a giant beam of light shining up in the sky. So that's where we would be at the end of this, kind of like a Tron moment where she would like stab the coupling and the coupling falls into the portal of light that's trying to bring hell into this world, and it would just explode, right?
Yeah. So she frees her parents, sort of. I mean, and she sees Kirsty lying there dead.
Yeah, at the bottom of the tower, because she was there at the door of the tower. And the fire that came out of that explosion killed her, but she's smiling, looking up at the sky, dead.
Yeah.
And Pinhead comes by to have the last word, right?
Yeah.
He says, "You will not always survive."
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah, I'd forgotten. Yeah. And I think this would have been good because, well, for one thing, I'd be intrigued to see how this plays out, in a movie. But also, this would be good because it continues the story of the first 4 Hellraiser movies.
Yeah.
They just totally flat out gave up on that, with Hellraiser Inferno. It has no connection at all to the other movies. Right.
One of the main complaints that I have for some of those later franchise sequels are exactly that they're just repurposed stories, and they just it just became like, oh, let's jump around, and now we got this story, and now with this story, and now it was really like no direction to it, no overarching story, nothing toward building towards something other than maybe just the fact that we know in the future Pinhead explodes in a spaceship.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then they brought Kirsty back in Hellraiser 6, but it was sort of an accident because the screenwriter had written Kirsty's name, the name Kirsty, in as a character, and Doug Bradley said, "Hey, if you're gonna put Kirsty in a character named Kirsty in there, you should make it Kirsty from the first 2 Hellraiser movies."
Right. So I think they put a scene there, something about inheritance from your dad and your uncle or something like that.
Yeah, to try to change it so that she's not some random person named Kirsty, that she's actually Kirsty Cotton. Which is like, can you imagine that screenwriter doing that and they thinking that that's going to be okay? To have a random person named Kirsty in the movie?
Anyway, so Hellfire. I think it would have been definitely a very British film. It would be fun. It would have been, if it had come out in 97, it would have been fun to watch. It would have brought back all the familiar stuff from Hellraiser, so that would definitely be well taken by people who are still kind of enjoying the comic books from Marvel. And it would
bring back Leviathan, right? Leviathan just has disappeared from Hellraiser movies after number 2.
Yeah, it would bring in new Cenobites. It would bring in Leviathan. It would bring in like magic, and he who commands the magic. Yeah, he who summons the magic commands the magic. Right. It's like a scene. Right. It's a phrase in this treatment directly from Hellraiser 4. So you even got a nightclub made out of like a decommissioned Gothic church. So just like the boiler room in Hellraiser 3. Like all the beats were there, everything. It would have been a fun movie, I think.
Yeah.
It would have been a really fun movie.
Yeah. I want to visit the alternate universe where they made this movie instead of Inferno.
I know. The next best thing is getting this Phantasmagoria issue number 9 for the special edition series of Hellraiser.
Yeah.
I would have preferred this one much more than Inferno, but as long as Craig Sheffer got paid, that's all that matters to me.
Yeah. The Weinsteins just wanted to make something cheap, and increasingly so over the years. Oh, we got some feedback. Eric from our Discord said, looking forward to the episode about Hellraiser V Hellfire.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, let us know what you thought.
Of course, the best way to support this podcast is through our Patreon at patreon.com/BarkerCast589. Our subscribers will get exclusive access to content not available anywhere else, like our Collector's Corner video series, rare Barker videos, and early behind-the-scenes stuff. Plus, backers in the $10 tier will also be able to choose an episode topic, and we might mail you something once in a while, depending on your location. Our supporters also get access to the exclusive channel in our Discord server. We'll be forever grateful if you consider helping us out and subscribing to our Patreon. So what's new on Patreon? And for our Patreon, I want to do a shout out to our Patreon members, David Anderson, Eric Vanderholt, who was the Eric who made that feedback, Daniel Elvin, and our returning sponsor, Don Bertram, Celebrate Imagination. Thanks, you guys.
All right.
Yeah. And our most recent Patreon submission, I did a Collector's Corner about Jericho. So go, if you're a paid member, you can watch that. I've been debating about whether we should make these exclusive forever or, have a limited time where they're exclusive and then open them up to other people.
Yeah, I think we should do that after a few months or something.
We've only got 3 people that can watch them right now besides us. So I've been thinking about, and if you're a Patreon subscriber, let us know what you think. Would you feel bad about having us open it up to everybody after a while, or would that be okay? So coming next, and actually we'll be filming that this weekend, Jericho Squad 77 is coming back. There's some crazy stuff I've got planned.
All right.
Yeah.
I've seen you. I've seen you plan your stuff in the Discord. I'm notified, but I try not to look at it so I don't metagame.
Oh. So what kind of notifications? Are just that I posted something in the artwork, or do you actually see what the
I see
are?
What the prompts are, yeah. Yeah.
Really?
It does show that to everybody in the server.
Crap.
I know. But it's okay because you go back and clean them up and you take them out, as soon as you're done. So whatever.
But did you actually read the prompts on that one?
No. Okay. No. I just browse them as a notification, but I do the best I can not to violate that trust. So obviously I did not.
Yeah, that was just a small part of what's coming.
Sure. No, absolutely. Yeah. You and Rob.
Yeah. Yeah, Rob and I, we spend a whole bunch of time working on the maps because we're doing something a little different on the maps this time. And then, of course, we'll talk about Rawhead Rex, the new release of Rawhead Rex, the Kino Lorber 4K edition, and more Boom Hellraiser comics discussion. And we'll go back to the Hellraiser Quartet of Torment, which is actually becoming even more relevant because the American or North American release is going to come out on October 22nd.
As much as I love Rawhead Rex, I hope this is the last time I have to watch this movie in some time. And this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have subscribed. You can find the Clive Barker Podcast wherever you find audio. Show notes for this episode, as well as news and reviews, can be found at our website at www.clivebarkercast.com. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial podcast and blog that is not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans. You can chat with us on our Facebook BarkerCast listeners group, our Facebook page, Twitter, or our Discord server. The best way to support us is to buy our book, The BarkerCast Interviews, Occupy Midian, available in hardcover on Amazon and ebook on Amazon and Apple Books. Fundraiser 10 is all about Patreon this year. Become a patron to get access to exclusive stuff, pick an episode topic, and maybe even get cool stuff in the mail. You can also buy a t-shirt on our TeePublic store. Go to tpublic.com and search for BarkerCast. Leave a message for us using the SpeakPipe link on our blog. Opening and ending music generously provided by Ray Norrish.
Thanks for listening.